both. Thank you for being here. Monica, you and I just met this morning. Julien and I actually met last week in Lisbon right before the election. So a lot has happened since then. I'm glad to see that you made it back here to the States. So before we get going, I think we should actually start by explaining what Workplace is. Some people here probably know, some people here may even be customers, but it is a new product for Facebook. So the way I think of it, and I want to hear your take, is that Workplace is essentially, it is Facebook, but instead of connecting with my friends and my high school, my high school friends and my aunt and uncle from Illinois, I'm connecting with all of my colleagues. It's as simple as that. How do you guys describe it?
Yeah, no, I think it is. First of all, thank you for having us. It's great to be here. I do think it's as simple as that. So Workplace is a communications platform that's intended to help organizations work better. Workplace incorporates the best of Facebook, so things like Newsfeed, groups, messaging, but it has been adapted to suit the needs of enterprise. So let me ask you this. How many of you are on Facebook? Yeah. So Kurt, I don't know about you, but like when I think about technology that I want to use in the workplace, I just want it to be easy to use. Like I don't want to have to read a training manual. I don't want to have to sit through training. I just want it to work, and I just want it to work well and seamlessly. I also want it to work really well on mobile.
So that's the pitch, right? I mean, it's like everyone here raised their hand. When you're out selling this, you're saying one of the benefits, everyone in your company already knows how to use it, right? I mean, is that really the crux of this whole thing?
I think what we realize is that the very same tools we built for 1.8 billion people, like the newsfeed, like groups, like Messenger, like Facebook Live, when adapted to the enterprise and to the workplace, actually make a lot of sense. It's not yet another productivity application. It's really a different way of running a company by giving everyone a voice, especially people who've never been connected before, people who don't have a desk, people who never had a PC, people who never had an email. So that's really what happens when companies deploy Workplace. It changes the way the company works because you give everyone a voice.
So it's Facebook, but with my colleagues, not my friends. It's a standalone app.
Correct.
You have a standalone messaging app as well. Who is using this right now? I know you have, I want to say, you told me thousands of different customers already. But give me some examples. I mean, like the Singapore government is using this?
I mean, it was great. The national government of Singapore recently announced that they're going to be launching Workplace to their 143,000 civil servants early next year. Another really great example is Danone, a global consumer products company that has launched Workplace to its 100,000 employees. So imagine being a leader at Danone. You want to communicate with your company. You want to communicate at scale. You know that building culture, giving everyone a voice, enabling people to collaborate and discover connections and information maybe they didn't even know they needed before is super, super important. Now, instead of sending an email that maybe people may not even read, if they do, they probably aren't replying to you, or you end up in a reply all mess, leaders can use Workplace to communicate at scale, get real-time reaction, spool up a lot of feedback, questions, and have a real engaged dialogue around their communication. The other interesting thing about Danone, by the way, is that of the 100,000, 30,000 of those employees are people who have never been connected before from an IT standpoint. People who don't have emails, they don't have IT-issued technology. And so think about the power of that, just being able to connect truly your entire organization at scale, where previously to get a message to these workers, you might have to literally print an email and post up a piece of paper in the break room. And now, because everyone has a mobile device, they can be instantly connected.
So is it a replacement for email? Like, are you competing with email with Workplace then?
I would say we compete with internal emails, newsletters, mailing lists, but also intranets that no one is using or that do not work on mobile. We compete with that behavior that Monica described, the CEO who wants to connect with everyone who wants to talk to everyone and who has to send an email that gets printed, that has to be posted in toilets of the company. That's the competition for us.
So that's one to many, right? Like that CEO blasting something to employees. Obviously, you guys have groups and stuff as well, so I realize that's not the only use case.
Yeah.
Do you see yourselves, do you compete with Slack? Do you compete with LinkedIn? Like, is this a directory product? Like when you're building this, when you see where Facebook Workplace fits into the marketplace, who is top of mind for you?
So just like Monica highlighted with the government of Singapore, they had their own intranet that they tried called Cube, and actually no one was using it. They did a pilot with Workplace with 5,000 employees, mobile-first employees, I would say, and they noticed a very high level of adoption. And so that was the competition for us. As I said, I think we compete with technologies and tools that have been in place for 20 years, 25 years, that no one is really excited about, and that everyone wants to replace. I think the ambition we have as an enterprise software company is to build enterprise software that people actually use and that people love to use. That's really our mission.
So let's backtrack for a second here. So Workplace, it used to be Facebook at Work, at least that was the launch name months ago. Yep. You guys have been using this inside of Facebook for what, like 5 years, right? And we're just now seeing it for the rest of us. So that is slow for Facebook. Facebook normally says we're going to do something, and 3 months later they have an app in all of our hands. So why did this take 5 years?
Yeah. So as you said, this is something we've been using internally for years. I think Facebook was built on Workplace, on that tool we were using. And a few years ago, some of our clients that saw us using the tool that really liked the way Facebook worked, and Facebook is really an organization where everyone has a voice, where the information travels fast, they told us they would love to give it a try. So 18 months ago, we decided to start testing Workplace outside Facebook with companies like Club Med, for example, or companies like Hootsuite or Heineken in the US. And we added something like 1,000 companies to the pilot, and every time we saw the same thing. It changed the way how the company was working. It created a different type of organization where everyone had a voice. And so this is why we decided, after 18 months of tests, to launch Workplace with a new name, with a very aggressive pricing, as you've seen, that shows our confidence and the confidence we have in the adoption of the product and the retention, but also our will to connect people who've never been connected before. And this is, we've been on the market for a month now, and we've been very happy with the demand and what we hear as well from the companies using the product.
And I want to get to the business side, but I mean, it seems like a weird, you guys are using it. It seems to be going well. The company it sounds as though you didn't have plans, right? You were like, hey, this is an internal thing, and we're happy to keep it that way. Partners or friends of Facebook say, hey, we like this, roll it out to us. That seems to me like an odd reason to make a big push like this, right? So what was the catalyst, right? Like, what was the reason that you said we're willing to get into because when Facebook does something, that's a big deal, right? So for you to say we want to get into enterprise software, it's not just like Heineken said, hey, that's pretty cool, why don't you let us borrow it? Like, what actually pushed you?
So actually, fundamentally, the mission of Workplace is very much aligned with the mission of Facebook. The mission of Facebook is to connect everyone. But you can't have the ambition to connect everyone if you don't connect the workplace. And to be honest, just like you said, this is I would say, a market that we did not cover with Facebook. Mm-hmm. There are companies using Facebook for work, using Facebook groups, for example, but they told us, these thousands of companies, they told us that they would love the same thing, but in a secure way for them and their colleagues. And this is why we decided to go with Workplace. But the mission of Workplace is very much aligned with the mission of Facebook. It's all about connecting people, giving everyone a voice. What we did not know, what we did not realize is that when you connect everyone in the company, it creates a more productive company.
Was there anything that and I get that, and I get that it aligns with the mission. I'm wondering if there's anything that happened that you were like, now is the time, right? Like, if you have this for 5 years, what made 18 months ago the appropriate time to say we're willing to jump in? Was it the fact that Slack all of a sudden has this multi-billion-dollar valuation? Was it LinkedIn? Like, what? There had to have been
a catalyst.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think what I would say is that during beta, there was never any question that we were going to do Workplace. I think we were learning a lot.
Okay.
Right? And we are a learning organization. We're running experiments all the time. We're always making the product better. And I think we learned some good lessons while we were in beta, right? We learned that customers didn't want ads in the product.
Sure.
That customers actually preferred to pay for the product as opposed to having ads in it. And we learned that users wanted entirely separate experiences and entirely separate apps. Thirdly, we learned that companies wanted some level of control, right? And so we spent a lot of time while we were in beta building the things that don't exist in core Facebook around security, right? User management. So one of the things we did very early on while we were in beta, two things actually. One is integrating with third-party providers, so single sign-on providers like Okta, Ping, One Login, as well as ensuring that companies had, through what we call a company dashboard or an admin panel, had the ability to control users, control groups, take down any kind of information or post that they may deem inappropriate for their culture. And we wanted to make sure that we had all those things in place and that we were fully ready when we came out.
Before you rolled out to everyone.
And the launch, the launch was not the beginning. The launch is not the end. The launch was a milestone in our journey, and I think that's how we think about it.
You brought something interesting, which is that no ads. I mean, Facebook makes 99% of its revenue from ads, right? And here we are, you're launching a product that is not ad-driven. So I guess maybe if you could just really briefly explain how the pricing works, but then also, what does that mean for you guys as a company? I imagine this is a new area of, it's a totally new area of business, but what are you learning about that? And is there, well, let's start with this. Why don't you explain how the pricing works?
Okay.
And then I'll dig in on all my questions. But
Sure. So our pricing is very simple, and that was one of the core tenets of our philosophy as we thought about the commercial model, was we wanted to keep things very, very simple. Again, back to easy to understand. So the pricing is $1, $2, or $3 based on the number of users.
Per user.
Per user.
Active
so
user.
Active user. So the second piece of our philosophy, we wanted to keep it simple. We also wanted our commercial model to be value-driven. So we charge based on monthly active usage of the product. We don't charge based on the number of employees you have or licenses or seats. All of our contracts are 30-day termination because we just simply don't believe in charging customers that aren't getting value from the product.
No long-term contracts, basically.
No long-term contracts. And then the third so simple, accessible, the third tenet of our philosophy was that we wanted to make it accessible to everyone. So back to connecting entire organizations, the low price point that we have basically reflects our ambition to connect organizations at scale.
So I mentioned ads is what Facebook does best. That's where the bulk of the revenue comes from. Do you have any plans to bring ads to Workplace? Can you kind of sustain that long term without doing that?
No ads, no social graph. You cannot play Candy Crush on Workplace as well. We did not import the Canvas platform. It's really a SaaS product with a subscription-based business model.
Is that because how much feedback? I mean, I imagine there's maybe some concern. I know when you guys were first talking about this, the concern I heard from potential customers was like, well, we don't want to hand Facebook our internal company communication. It could be a competitive thing. It could be, it's just, a little bit more, even more private than we feel like our personal information is. How much pushback have you gotten there, and is that part of the reason that you went with the subscription model, not the ad model?
It was very clear. I mean, as many people here know, when you're in the SaaS business, you monetize with a subscription-based model. And the feedback from our clients was also very clear. So you really have to think of it as a SaaS startup inside Facebook with a SaaS business model. And don't forget, it's totally separated. We also took time to go through the SOC 2, SOC 3 certifications. We joined the US-EU Privacy Shield framework. But we did not spend more than 1 minute on that question when we defined the business model of the product.
Okay, so you recently started. Are you actually making money from this yet?
We are not charging for the product just yet.
Okay.
We're
you
still
announced
on
that
the
you're
free.
going to, but
we're going to. We're in the free trial period. So any company that signs up today receives the product for free until the end of March.
Do you have legitimate business? I imagine you do. Can you share with us what your legitimate business goals are with this? I mean, like, how big does Facebook want to make this as an actual bottom line business versus just an added feature?
We want to grow Workplace just like we've grown Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, by first making sure we had the right adoption, the right engagement, the right satisfaction, and then to think about monetization. So right now the priority for us, for the entire team, is on adoption and retention. That's really what's keeping us at night. And we have, just like our comparables at Facebook, we have the highest level of ambition. We think about hundreds of millions of people who could be using the app. That's the priority right now. This is what drives everything for us.
Okay, so not worried about money. Next year when we have this conversation, we'll get into
As I said,
the nitty-gritty.
We need to build an app that people actually use.
Yeah.
Don't forget that adoption is very often a problem for deployment of SaaS solutions, but also an app that people love to use. An app you go back to every day, many times a day, that helps you to get the job done, to feel connected to your coworkers, that could create an organization where the news travel fast, where you make better decisions because you have access to information you could not have before.
Okay.
That's the priority for us.
Okay, so I want to talk about some features here because we already heard from the Slack folks and I mentioned a few other potential competitors to this. But I want to start with what is Facebook's core and most defining feature, which is Newsfeed. Newsfeed for core Facebook has been in the news because of fake news lately. How does Newsfeed work on your product? Is it the same algorithm? Is it roughly the same product that we all use with our core Blue app?
Yeah, everything starts with the Newsfeed. That's the reason why people go back to the app on mobile and on the web every day, many times a day. But on consumer Facebook, you have the social graph, so we know who your friends are, who are the people you talk to the most. We actually use kind of the same thing on Workplace, so we know what your chain of command is, who is your manager, who are the people you work with, the people you work for. So that gives us signals to make sure that you always see what's important for you on top of the Newsfeed.
Okay, so it's pretty much the same technology.
AI technology.
Has the last week changed anything for you guys? I mean, there's been a lot of pushback around making sure the stuff we see in again, core Blue app Newsfeed is legit news. How has that changed what you guys are doing, or has it?
Yeah, so it hasn't impacted Workplace. I mean, every company that's using Workplace owns their own data. They own their own implementation of Workplace. They establish their own policies, their own guidelines, how they, rules of engagement. So I don't think the last week has had any impact on Workplace.
Okay, so if I see things in Workplace that for some reason my colleagues are sharing inappropriate or whatever, who sets those boundaries? Is that a Facebook thing, or you said that companies set those? So companies are now policing that feed versus Facebook.
Yeah, so again, companies really own their own deployment of Workplace. You really have to think about Workplace as sort of a private Facebook for a given company.
Sure.
So they establish rules of engagement. There's a feature in the product that any user can identify a specific post as potentially inappropriate. And what happens then is that post gets flagged to an admin of the instance, and the admin can decide based on a company's individual policies whether they want to take that down and whether they want to have any ramification from that type of behavior.
Yeah.
It would be impossible for us, given the complexity and cultural differences across countries. I mean, this is truly, truly a global endeavor. And you think about the complexities across countries, across industries, across types of workers and regulations, it would be, even if we wanted to, it would be literally impossible for us to set those standards. It is much, much better to let each individual company decide
Sure.
for themselves.
Yeah.
Don't forget the big difference between Workplace and Facebook is that on Facebook, on consumer Facebook, you post on your timeline. On Workplace, you post in groups and you join groups. Most of what you see in the newsfeed is coming from groups. If you don't like what you see, you don't have to stay in the group. You can leave the group, but as the context is very different,
Yeah.
Our mission is to make sure that what's important for you, because it's coming from the CEO or because it's coming from someone who works for you in a country that you've never been to, but where you have to spend time on, we want to make sure that you see what's important for you.
Gotcha.
That's what the newsfeed does brilliantly on Facebook and on Workplace.
Gotcha. So passing kind of the responsibility on to the companies themselves, that makes a lot of sense. Want to move on to other stuff, but I have to ask, since you guys are Facebook employees, and I won't ask you, of course, to speak on behalf of the company, but as employees, there has been a lot in the last couple of days about people not being super happy with how this fake news thing has been handled. Is that overblown? I mean, what's the vibe inside of Facebook at the moment? Like, is that a fair assessment that the press has going here, or what's it like?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think it's my area or Julien's area to comment. I think Mark posted on that specific topic recently, so I would direct everyone to read Mark's
Point to Mark's post.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Back to products. You all do not offer document sharing right now, which seems to be a core part of any office collaboration. Do you have plans to do that? Am I going to be able to create a Facebook Word document or a spreadsheet or whatever? What is the feelings on that?
You can share documents on Workplace today.
Okay, you can share documents, but from who's hosting those documents?
We do host these documents.
Okay.
But as I said, we want to grow a workplace just like we've grown Facebook by first building the network, making sure that people will actually use it and that everyone in the company would be using it. But then, once you have the network, once you have high adoption, high engagement, high satisfaction and retention, we want to build services on top of that network. Some of these services will be built by us, like Facebook Live,
Sure.
that we announced on Workplace a month ago, like multi-company groups. If you're using Workplace, if I'm using it, we can collaborate in a secret group. But all of the scenarios you've described are great opportunities for partners. And don't forget that Facebook has a history at launching platforms, at creating ecosystems. We've done that before. Most of the people who are working on Workplace were part of the Facebook platform team. So this is something we think about all the time. But when we talk to the leaders at Danone, at Save the Children, at Booking.com, what they want is something that everyone in the company will use. Adoption first. Then you think about the Workday integration, the SAP integration,
Sure.
but not just right now.
So what areas do you want to get into then? If you're already providing some document sharing features, for example, I know when I have conversations with folks at Facebook, I use Blue Jeans for video conferencing. That seems like a prime example where Facebook should probably be able to do video conferencing as well as anybody else. Is that something that you guys want to get into, or?
No, I think our value is in being the communication platform of the company, the homepage, the place where you go back to every day, many times a day. And when you have that, you de facto become an interesting distribution or discovery platform for other apps. And we want to stick to that. We want to stick to being the communication platform, the homepage, where you go back to every day, many times a day, connected to many other services. Just like Facebook is connected to many websites and apps. But that's the vision we have for Workplace.
You don't want to build it yourself necessarily. You're saying we can host or provide a place for others who already do that.
Exactly.
What kind of relationships do you already have? I know you mentioned some document stuff. I mean, what are some names of folks that we might know that you're
Monica mentioned the integrations we have with Okta, OneLogin, Ping, Google, Microsoft on the identity front. But obviously, we are talking to every relevant SaaS company in the productivity space. All the things they do that we don't want to do, but that would make a lot of sense if connected to Workplace.
Okay. I want to remind all of you guys, we're going to open it up to questions in just a few minutes here. So if you have them, keep them top of mind, and we'll get to you shortly. One of the last things I want to talk to you about is AI, artificial intelligence. We heard the Slack folks talking about it. It sounded a little creepy, to be honest with you. I mean, this idea that they are reading all of my correspondence with colleagues and therefore determining that I might be an expert on, I'm a Seahawks fan, so anyone has a question on Seattle Seahawks, they should be coming to me because they're reading my messages. How much does AI incorporate into Workplace? Obviously, AI is a huge part of Facebook. Is it a huge part of Workplace?
Well, there's AI already in Workplace in the sense that if you think about how Newsfeed works, there's a lot of different signals that are feeding into Newsfeed, and those are AI-driven.
The algorithms.
Right? And we talked a little bit, Julien talked a little bit earlier around some of the differences around what's feeding Newsfeed in Workplace as opposed to consumer Facebook. But that's largely around people that you're engaging with often, engagement on posts, your participation in groups, et cetera. We also have some AI built into the product around accessibility.
Okay.
And we've got several organizations on the platform already where much of that functionality.
What does that mean exactly, accessibility?
So think of a company that is using Workplace like the Royal National Institute for the Blind. It's a UK-based company, 1,000 people. Most of the company is blind. So they could not use your traditional, typical enterprise software.
Text translate.
So on Workplace, we tell them what's in the picture. This is a guy and a tree and a dog.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that is AI coming from consumer Facebook that we inherited on Workplace, but actually make a lot of sense. And once again, how many software companies care about connecting blind people and giving them the same accessibility and the same tools than we use? So that's really the mission of Facebook to do that.
What about that use case that Slack brought up, right? The one that I kind of described here at the beginning of kind of the fact that you have access to what we're talking about. Let's help prioritize where you should spend your time, who you should be replying to. If you only have 5 minutes and you have 10 different notifications, which 3 are is that something that you're
That's the newsfeed. That's the beauty of the newsfeed.
That's what Newsfeed already does.
Exactly.
It should surface higher. I mean, the idea of Newsfeed is like when you sit down at dinner and you sort of prioritize what are the 3 or 4 things that I want to tell my family about for my day, those should be the 3 or 4 things that are surfacing to the top of your Newsfeed.
Okay. Same as regular.
Lots of different signals, that feed into that. And I think, a lot of this comes back to, again, the accessibility point and how do you use AI, how do you use this technology to make Workplace work well for anyone. I mean, one thing we didn't talk about today is just translation across languages. And we're lucky because we inherit a lot of the functionality from core Facebook, which is innovating so fast. Back to your point about Facebook being so fast, we're benefiting from all the innovation that literally thousands of engineers are doing on core Facebook every single day. And I think things like AI in Newsfeed or language translation are really good examples of that.
And I think that's what our customers love about Workplace. They can feel that, just like they feel when they use Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, they can feel that the application they have is getting nicer, faster, better all the time, because we ship code all the time, just like we've done with Facebook. And that speed of innovation that we all know in the world of consumer tech is quite unique in the world of enterprise software. And that's what our clients really love about the app. It gets better every day. Like Facebook Live makes a lot of sense on Facebook, makes a lot of sense on Workplace. We had the CEO of a company in Australia, NBN, it's a big broadband company in Australia. He used Facebook Live to show the launch of the new satellite that they had. So the entire company in Australia was watching on Workplace the launch of the satellite. So it makes the CEO look cool.
Yeah.
It also creates a different culture in the company, a different vibe. Everyone's celebrating a company-wide achievement from a mobile device.
Right.
Possible to do with emails or intranets.
Right, you don't need that email. I want to open it up to questions here before I keep going on my own. Looks like we have one.
A quick question. Microsoft bought Yammer a few years ago, which was kind of Facebook for work. Can you distinguish between Workplace and what Microsoft might offer with that product?
Question is, what's the difference between Workplace and Yammer, which Microsoft bought?
I think Yammer sold itself as the Facebook of the enterprise. We actually want to be the Facebook of the enterprise. But to build things like the Newsfeed, to build something that works on mobile in every possible country, we have a global business already. India is actually our first country. To do that is actually quite difficult. And we can only do what we want to do because we have 12 years of history and 1.8 billion people using the tool, Facebook, that we have today. So as I said, we want to be the Facebook of the enterprise. We want to give the familiarity of these tools to the workplace.
You're the real Facebook. You're the real deal, right? Yeah, another question.
Hi there. Yeah, so you gave some really good enterprise examples, and that makes a lot of sense when you have a massive company that you're trying to stay connected with. I'm curious, do you have any SMB examples, and is SMB part of your vision for Workplace?
Yeah, I'll give an example. I don't know if you'd consider them SMB, but GoPro is using Workplace across their 2,000 employees. And obviously a company here in the Valley that's scaled very quickly. One of the stories that they've told recently that I love is that as they've scaled, it's become very difficult to find the right people to answer the right question. And so, they have an intranet site, but again, that's more static information. What they did in their deployment of Workplace is they created one group for the entire company, 2,000 people, that's called questions. That's it, questions. And now when people have a question and they don't know who to go to, they post the question, and within minutes, somebody sees it who knows somebody who can help answer that question. So they had somebody in their support team in Manila find a technical issue, didn't know where to go, put it in the questions group, and literally within minutes was able to find the right answer and get it resolved.
Now, we have a lot of SMBs, but it's true that the product really works better when you have people on different time zones, speaking different languages, a lot of people who never had anything before. I can think of that construction company in Germany, 20 people. It's people like building stuff on the ground, never had an email before. They use Workplace to share pictures of what they've built today with the people in the HQ. That's 20 people. So that's the behavior we see quite often.
Great. Probably time for one more question. See one over here.
So thanks. So those of us who were here yesterday heard a lot about analytics, and I'm curious in terms of AI and the dashboard that you mentioned that employers have, what their capability is to analyze what's going on in the company, as well as kind of the big brother aspect of them seeing everything and how can they sort it and analyze it and so forth.
So this is part of the company dashboard, which is a tool that only the administrator of the company can access. And you get the typical analytics, monthly active users, mobile users, most popular groups, most popular users, top influencers of the company. So all of that is built inside the company dashboard, but it's only accessible for the admins of the company that are deploying Workplace for their colleagues.
And are they, it sounds like they're not actually reading my specific conversations, though. They're just, those are high, those, what you just described, that's high level
aggregated
analytics,
data.
Right? Okay, excellent. Well, we're over time, but thank you so much for being here, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Kurt.